Alright, it's almost time to start, guys. I know I'm actually the only one on here right now, at least according to Streamlabs, but it's almost time to start. So, alright, let's go. Alright, we're going to start right here on my pretty face. I know it's not that pretty, but whatever. Um, okay, so I'm going to start reading The Handmaid's Tale today. I do not have a paperback copy. I have a digital copy. I also have the audiobook, but today we're going to be going through the digital copy. Let me get my screen off of myself, and actually let me get myself out of this page because that is not where I want to be. All right, I will go ahead and make sure I put in another text. Actually, I need to do that in the page that I was just at. I am so very smooth. All right, so let's do this. I have that on mute, so that's good. It takes me a bit to type and stuff. My processing speed is not great. And I didn't use proper grammar and stuff either, so whatever. Anyway, let's see. Yep, it went through. It looks fine. And I am now going to get back off of here. I'll just pause it on here and then go to where I should be. Okay. Ooh, I wanted to do that with each page. And when I get to the reading portion, that's going to, it just won't look great, but whatever. All right, so we're going to start reading Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. I do love this book. I do love the show. I have not watched the movie yet. I've seen glimpses of it here and there, just little clips and advertisements, but I have not actually watched the show all the way, or the movie all the way through. I believe it was made in the 80s, maybe the early 90s. The book itself was written, I think, in the 80s. And as Margaret Atwood tells us, she pulls almost every horrific event that happens in this dystopian novel from real life scenarios. Not necessarily real life that was going on at the time, but real life that had happened at some point in history. Some more recently, some less recently, and some of it is occurring now. Not intentionally. She's stated how like she definitely did not expect things in this world to be so close to mirroring what she wrote. And this is not the only dystopian novel she has. She has others. But this is the one that I am reading because I so thoroughly like this book. I do like dystopian novels. Does that say something about me? Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, let's go ahead and get down to it. I'm gonna, so just for a little background for anybody that does not know, Handmaid's Tale starts out as if it's kind of, I mean, not the very beginning of the book. The very beginning of the book, they are smack dab in the middle of this dystopian regime. And the narrator is the lead person in the book. The story is around her tale. It is called The Handmaid's Tale because it is surrounding her tale. It's her perspective, how she sees things, the things that she went through, her way of writing it, that kind of thing. And in the very beginning, she is in her room, which is just a simple room with a bed, a chair, little desk, a window, which she is sitting in. And we'll see that later. I have a couple pictures I have pictures that I set for the beginning of each chapter. So at the beginning of each chapter, I will go ahead and I made just a little teeny, really simple video compilation with music, the same music that's at the beginning of my start page will be in those little clips. Anyway, she has been kidnapped. Her kids have been taken and put with these very wealthy leaders of the country. The country is now called Gilead. It used to be the United States. And she has been made a handmaid. A handmaid is not what I thought it was before I started watching the show, before I learned about The Handmaid's Tale. It is not somebody who goes around and cleans your house or anything like that. No, it is a person that has been used basically as a concubine. The leaders want to have children, and if they don't feel that they are having children because the commander or his wife are barren or not able to, or even if he feels that he's not having enough children, he can hire a handmaid that once a month they have a ritualistic ceremony where they rape the handmaid to try to get her pregnant. That's like the main gist of the story, but where the story really begins, or I would say the timeline begins, how America falls and becomes Gilead, is it all takes place in kind of a modern setting where things seem to be going sort of normal, and then all of a sudden you start seeing these little clues and hints here and there of things going awry, of things not quite going how they're supposed to be. And then bigger events start happening that people kind of excuse away. They don't realize exactly what's happening because they're being fed a story to suit the people that are trying to take over the country. And by the time they realize what's going on, it's too late. The whole country's been freaking taken over. They're killing people, they're kidnapping people, they're putting them in restrictive roles that they never thought they would have been in, and fucking United States is gone except for some very small outposts on the skirts of the country that are still at war with Gilead and still trying to keep their freedom. But most of the country has been taken over. Anyway, let's go ahead and start the story. We're going to go to the reading page. And I said I would put in a text, so just hold on. This is going to show my other, this is going to show this. So it's just frozen. All right. And that is on. All right. Now, back to the book. I believe start at page 7, which is the beginning of part 1, called Night. A lot of the chapters and sections in this book are called Night. And if you listened to my kind of preview of me, my first stream about this, where I read a little bit from the beginning of the book before chapter 1, they talk about how night is used several times in this. You can go back to that video if you want. It should be in my Handmaid's Tale playlist. I'm not sure at what point, but it should also be one of the most recent live streams that I did. So you can go back and look for that if you like. Now, let's go to the next page. All right. Actually, we're going to do Okay, so I'm going to play this little compilation I did for chapter 1. It's just the image. I didn't want it to be too hokey and silly, but it's mostly made with video transitions and stuff. I just wanted something short, but something to kind of reflect some of what's going on in the first chapter. And in the first chapter, they're talking about the gym setting that they are in early on in the book. And we'll hear this in the chapter. So let's get on with it. Actually, let me hold on. I gotta shut that down. All right. So, chapter 1. We slept in what had once been the gymnasium. The floor was of varnished wood with stripes and circles painted on it for the games that were formerly played there. The hoops for the basketball nets were still in place, though the nets were gone. A balcony ran around the room for the spectators, and I thought I could smell faintly, like an after-image, the pungent scent of sweat shot through the sweet taint of chewing gum and perfume from the watching girls, felt skirted as I knew from pictures, later in mini skirts, then pants, then in one earring, spiky, green streaked hair. Dances would have been held here. The music lingered, a palimpsest of unheard sound, style upon style, an undercurrent of drums, a forlorn wail, garlands made of tissue paper flowers, cardboard devils, a revolving ball of mirrors, powdering the dancers with a snow of light. So I think she does a pretty good job of just like conjuring up that imagery of those memories of being in a gym during your dances and all of that. Oh, even the smell of the gym being used as it was, as an actual sporting arena. I don't know how many of you have been to dances. I think I started going to dances fairly late in my high school years, but once I started going, I kind of enjoyed it. It was like I didn't go specifically for going out with guys. It was more like we always had like a group of friends that really enjoyed going to these dances. We did hate, though, that usually the music was shit and it was not what we wanted to listen to. Granted, you could go and ask the DJ or whoever it was to play something you actually wanted to listen to, but it seemed like our requests were very frequently drowned out by all these other requests that we did not like. I remember the smoke machines and being like right next to the smoke machines and it just like going off in front of me. And anyway, just brings back memories, which is the intent of that passage. There was old sex in the room, and loneliness, and expectation of something without a shape or name. I remember that yearning. Don't ask me why I'm getting all teary, but I am. Okay, so that's weird. For something that was always about to happen, and what was never the same as the hands that were on us then, there and then, in the small of the back or out back in the parking lot, or in the television room with the sound turned down and only the pictures flickering over lifting flesh. We yearned for the future. How did we learn it? That talent for insatiability? It was in the air, and it was still in the air, an afterthought, as we tried to sleep in these army cots that had been set up in rows, with spaces between so we could not talk. We had flannelette sheets like children's, and army issue blankets, old ones that still said U.S. We folded our clothes neatly and laid them on the stools at the ends of the beds. The lights were turned down, but not out. Aunt Sarah and Aunt Elizabeth patrolled. They had electric cattle prods slung on thongs from their leather belts. And we'll get to hear more about these electric cattle prods later on. No guns, though. Even they could not be trusted with guns. Guns were for the guards, specially picked from the angels. The guards weren't allowed inside the building except when called, and we weren't allowed out except for our walks, twice daily, 2 by 2, around the football field, which was enclosed now by a chain link fence topped with barbed wire. The angels stood outside it with their backs to us. They were objects of fear to us, but of something else as well. If only they would look. If only we could talk to them. Something could be exchanged, we thought. Some deal made. Some trade-off. We still had our bodies. That was our fantasy. We learned to whisper almost without sound. In the semi-darkness, we could stretch out our arms when the aunts weren't looking. And this is where that picture was. I don't know if it's exactly the picture. I had another one that I think was actually from the show, where they were in the beds and they actually had mattresses, the U.S. Army blankets, and they were reaching their arms across, but it was like very, very blurry and grainy and very tiny. So I did not use that one. Let's see, where was I? We learned to lip read, our heads flat on the beds, turned sideways, watching each other's mouths. In this way, we exchanged names from bed to bed. Alma, Janine, Dolores, Moira, June. Now, if you've watched the show, this is where they say they came up with the name June. Nobody really knows for sure the name of the handmaid that is narrating the book. But for the show, they wanted to put a face with the name, and so June was what they came up with. The stuff about the guards and them being allowed to have guns but not being allowed in there, the aunts being allowed in there but not allowed to have guns, but they are allowed to have cattle prods. That stuff is going, it should, if it follows the book, it should be showing up in Testaments. When you start Testaments, there should be a pretty healthy explanation of how this whole thing was set up, how they decided on the different roles that people were playing, on what the rules were, all of that. You get little glimpses of how some of the rules were made in the show, but I felt like it was really much more detailed and much more like in the present time that it was happening, kind of detailed explanation of what was actually going on and how they set everything up. Anyway, that is chapter 1. It's a very short chapter. So, let's see. Pretty sure next page is going to be the next part. So, also a very short part, which is why I decided to do part 1 and start with part 2. I am only starting with part 2. I am not finishing it today. Since this is my first time doing this, I did not want to get too crazy. I don't read very fast, and I have a lot of other things going on, so I'm trying to fit these in where I can. I will try to do these either on Tuesdays or Fridays or possibly the weekends. I will try to do them twice a week, though there is no guarantee. My kid is in school, they have a lot of classes, and I am actually gone a lot of the time, so I only have a pretty small window frame that I can do stuff as long as I don't have appointments and as long as I'm able to get everything else done. Anyway, let's go ahead and go to our Chapter 2, Window. All right, and if you have watched Handmaid's Tale, that scene, that scenario right there with her being in that room, that should be very familiar. It should be a very, very familiar beginning to the show, and a very familiar room that you see throughout the show, because June is in there quite a lot. She does a lot of her thinking and contemplating in there, so it stands to reason. Anyway, let's get on to chapter 2. A chair, a table, a lamp. Hold on a minute. Okay, all right. A chair, a table, a lamp. Above, on the white ceiling, a relief ornament in the shape of a wreath, and in the center of it, a blank space, plastered over like the place in a face where the eyes have been taken out. There must have been a chandelier there once. They've removed anything you could tie a rope to. A window, 2 white curtains. Under the window, a window seat with a little cushion. When the window is partly open, it only opens partly. The air can come in and make the curtains move. I can sit in the chair or on the window seat, hands folded, and watch this. Sunlight comes in through the window too and falls on the floor, which is made of wood in narrow strips, highly polished. I can smell the polish. There's a rug on the floor, oval of braided rags. This is the kind of touch they like. Folk art, archaic, made by women in their spare time from things that have no further use. A return to traditional values. Waste not, want not. I am not being wasted. Why do I want? So that beginning part, they're talking about that chandelier up there, or where the chandelier likely used to be. And you can see that something used to be there, but it is no longer there anymore. They've removed everything that you could hurt yourself with, because girls have intentionally tried to hurt themselves. And it also describes the window. The window, I believe, is caged. The window does not open all the way. It opens a little so you can get a little bit of air, but that's about it. All right, let's see. On the wall above the chair, a picture, framed but with no glass. A print of flowers, blue irises, watercolor. Flowers are still allowed. Does each of us have the same print, the same chair, the same white curtains? I wonder. Government issue. So she's contemplating, what is it like for all these other handmaids in their respective prisons, because that's basically what they are. They're prisons where they're allowed some freedom to move around and go out, but overall they are very restricted as to where they can go, when they can go, and all of that. And their main prison is that room. That is where they are sent every night. That is where they go before their ceremonies. That is where they go to try to get some rest, where they go for bathing, all of that. All right. Think of it as being in the army, said Aunt Lydia. A bed, single mattress, medium hard, covered with a flocked white spread. Nothing takes place in the bed but sleep, or no sleep. I try not to think too much. Like other things now, thought must be rationed. There's a lot that doesn't bear thinking about. Thinking can hurt your chances, and I intend to last. I know why there's no glass in front of the watercolor picture of blue irises, and why the window only opens partly, and why the glass in it is shatterproof. It isn't running away they're afraid of. We wouldn't get far. It's those other escapes, the ones that you can open up in yourself, giving a cutting edge. So they're really talking about that, like, why are these things this way? Because you can hurt yourself, you can kill yourself, and people have certainly tried, because they are being imprisoned. They are not there of their own free will, and the circumstances are not great. So apart from these details, this could be a college guest room for the less distinguished visitors, or a room in a rooming house of former times for ladies in reduced circumstances. That is what we are now. The circumstances have been reduced. For those of us who still have circumstances. So that's a very important thing. Even though they are being imprisoned, even though they do not have freedom, they cannot make choices for themselves, there is all kinds of stuff they are no longer allowed to do, they're still there. They do have circumstances. And to some people, they think that these girls that are handmaids are in good situations. But really, I beg to differ. All right. But a chair, sunlight, flowers, these are not to be dismissed. I am alive. I live. I breathe. I put my hand out, unfolded into the sunlight. Where I am is not a prison, but a privilege, as Aunt Lydia said, who was in love with either or. The bell that measures time is ringing. Time here is measured by bells, as once in nunneries. As in a nunnery, too, there are few mirrors. Okay, and Aunt Lydia is very important. If you've seen the show, you know very well who Aunt Lydia is. If you have not, she is basically like your prison guard almost, or maybe your teacher. Like, she's a lot of things. She's a teacher, she's a prison guard, she is keeping an eye on things, making sure that you are doing what you should be doing, making sure that the wives are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and likely reporting things when they are going haywire. Who exactly they're reporting to, don't know. In the show, we see it a couple times, but in the book, I don't think we get to that position. And the book, by the way, is basically the timeline from the very first season of the show. After the first season of the show, they continue on with June's story, with the handmaid's story, but it is a continuation that had not been written. So I believe they were working with Margaret Atwood, so they could at least get an idea of this is how we should go. But she did not have a book for this. She did not have testaments until well into the series. All right, so let's see. Okay. I get up out of the chair, advance my feet into the sunlight in their red shoes, flat-heeled to save the spine and not for dancing. The red gloves are lying on the bed. I pick them up, pull them onto my hands, finger by finger. Everything except the wings around my face is red, the color of blood, which defines us. The skirt is ankle length, full, gathered to a flat yoke that extends over the breasts. The sleeves are full. The white wings, too, are prescribed issue. They are to keep us from seeing, but also from being seen. I never I never looked good in red. It is not my color. I picked up the shopping basket, put it over my arm. And it's interesting, she says her color, her red is not her color. And I don't remember if she says that in the show. But later on in the show, after she has been entrenched in this regime so long and she finally escapes, there are numerous times where you see her wearing red. And the red really is, it really has a lot of symbolism. I am pretty sure they selected the colors of all the different uniforms that the women wore for particular reasons, but the symbolism of the handmaid is the only one that I actually know. I don't know really why the aunts are wearing brown and the wives are wearing this kind of teal greenish blue color, which people keep calling blue, but I say it is teal. It is a bluish green, greenish blue, not blue. There's a difference. Anyway, the Marthas are wearing a kind of really drab light green color, or almost olive, maybe a little paler than olive. And then in the book, there are these groups of people that are not the leaders. They are in a more impoverished position. And in the book, those people wear stripes. But in the show, I think they mostly wear gray. So, anyway. The door of the room, not my room, I refuse to say my, is not locked. In fact, it doesn't shut properly. I go out into the polished hallway, which has a runner down the center, dusty pink, like a path through the forest, like a carpet for royalty. It shows me the way. The carpet bends and goes down the front staircase, and I go with it, one hand on the banister. Once a tree, turned into another century, rubbed to a warm gloss. Late Victorian the house is, a family house built for a large rich family. There's a grandfather clock in the hallway which doles out time, and then the door to the motherly front sitting room, with its flesh tones and hints, a sitting room in which I never sit, but stand or kneel only. At the end of the hallway, above the front door, is a fanlight of colored glass, flowers, red and blue. There remains a mirror on the hall wall. If I turned my head so that the white wings framing my face direct my vision towards it, I can see it as I go down the stairs. Round, convex, a pier glass, like the eye of a fish, and myself in it like a distorted shadow, a parody of something, some fairy tale figure in a red cloak, descending towards a moment of carelessness that is the same as danger, a sister dipped in blood. All right. Oops. Let's try to... At the bottom of the stairs, there's a hat and umbrella stand, the bent wood kind. Long, rounded rungs of wood curving gently up into hooks. Get rid of that. Shaped like the opening fronds of a fern. There are several umbrellas in it. Black for the commander, blue for the commander's wife, and the one assigned to me, which is red. I leave the red umbrella where it is, because I know from the window that the day is sunny. I wonder whether or not the commander's wife is in the sitting room. She doesn't always sit. Sometimes I can hear her pacing back and forth, a heavy step and then a light one, and the soft tap of her cane on the dusty rose carpet. So in this version, in the book, the wife is actually older and she has a limp. But in the TV show, she is younger and does not have a limp. So, just so we know. And you'll hear about it later on in the book. I walk along the hallway past the sitting room door and the door that leads into the dining room, and open the door at the end of the hall and go through into the kitchen. Here, the smell is no longer of furniture polish. Rita is in here, standing at the kitchen table, which has a top chipped white enamel. Excuse me, which has a top chipped white enamel. She's in her usual Martha's dress, which is a dull green, like a surgeon's gown of the time before. The dress is much like mine in shape, long and concealing, but with a bib apron over it, and without the white wings and the veil. She puts the veil on to go outside, but nobody much cares who sees the face of a Martha. Her sleeves are rolled to the elbow, showing her brown arms. She's making bread, throwing the loaves for the final brief... She's making bread, throwing the loaves for the final brief kneading, and then the shaping. Another thing that we're going to see, hopefully later on when we get the testaments, is like more descriptions of the Martha, because one of the girls in the story, she actually wants to do the things the Marthas are doing, but her destiny lies in a different role. So it's like one of the things that she envies, that these Marthas can do something that they love, but she's being forced to do something else entirely different that she does not want to do and is not interested in. Anyway, Rita sees me and nods, whether in greeting or in simple acknowledgement of my presence, it's hard to say, and wipes her floury hands on her apron and rummages the kitchen drawer for the token book. Frowning, she tears out 3 tokens and hands them to me. Her face might be kindly if she would smile, but the frown isn't personal. It's the red dress she disapproves of, and what it stands for. She thinks I may be catching, like a disease or any form of bad luck. Sometimes I listen outside closed doors, and a thing I never would have done in the time before. I don't listen long, because I don't want to be caught doing it. Once, though, I heard Rita say to Cora that she wouldn't debase herself like that. "Nobody asking you," Cora said. "Anyways, what could you do, supposing?" "Go to the colonies," Rita said. "They have the choice." "With the unwoman and starve to death, and Lord knows what all," said Cora. "Catch you." They were shelling peas, even through the almost closed door I could hear. So, in the story, Cora is one of the Marthas. There are 2 Marthas in this household, but in the show there is just Rita. There is no other Martha in the household. Every now and then you'll see other Marthas, but they're from other households. I can hear the light clink of the hard peas falling into the metal bowl. I heard Rita, a grunt or a sigh of protest or agreement. "Anyways, they're doing it for us all," said Cora. "Or so they say. If I hadn't got my tubes tied, it could have been me. Say I was 10 years younger. It's not that bad. It's not what you'd call hard work." "Better her than me," Rita said, and I opened the door. Their faces were the way women's faces are when they've been talking about you behind your back and they think you've heard, embarrassed, but also a little defiant, as if it were their right. That day, Cora was more pleasant to me than usual. Rita more surly. So, yeah, the whole thing about them telling stories. And this is a little glimpse of the people in Gilead and their real feelings about these handmaids, because Gilead is presenting this story that these girls are to be honored, that they are in an honorable position chosen by God, and they are providing the children for the realm. But many of the people really do not like the handmaids. They don't necessarily know the whole story, so they don't have a good understanding of what these handmaids actually went through. And a lot of them think the handmaids have a choice, that they volunteered for this. But the choice is you get kidnapped, and when they know that you have ovaries that work, if you've sinned in any way, basically, any way that they consider sinful, and it's not necessarily what's sinful in the Bible, it is what they have picked out as sinful, and a lot of the other stuff is just ignored and tossed out. So if they decide you're sinful, you have a set of ovaries and they work, you have the choice between being a handmaid or going to the colonies. The colonies are very large areas of the United States that are basically not much good anymore, because some of them are radiated and need to be cleaned up because of nuclear waste from nuclear fallout. And some of it is for actually taking care of crops and stuff like that. So you have your wasteland and you have your cropland, and you go to one of those, and if you're going to the wasteland, you're just going to slowly die. A very slow, horrible, painful death. So is that really a choice? No, it's not a choice. Today, despite Rita's closed face and pressed lips, I would like to stay here in the kitchen. Cora might come in from somewhere else in the house, carrying her bottle of lemon oil and her duster, and Rita would make coffee in the houses of the commanders. There is still real coffee, and we would sit at Rita's kitchen table, which is not Rita's any more than it's my table, and we would talk about our aches and pains, illnesses, our feet, our backs, all the different kinds of mischief that our bodies, like unruly children, can get up to. We would nod our heads as punctuation to each other's voices, signaling that yes, we know all about it. We would exchange remedies and try to outdo each other in the recital of our physical miseries. Gently, we would complain, our voices soft and minor key, and mournful as pigeons in the eaves troughs. I know what you mean, we'd say, or a quaint expression you sometimes hear, still from older people. I hear where you're coming from, as if the voice itself were a traveler arriving from a distant place, which it would be, which it is. How I used to despise such talk. Now I long for it. At least it was talk, an exchange of sorts. Or we would gossip. The Marthas know things. They talk among themselves, passing the unofficial news from house to house. Like me, they listen at doors, no doubt, and see things even with their eyes averted. I've heard them at it at sometimes, caught whiffs of their private conversations. Stillborn it was, or stabbed her with a knitting needle right in the belly. Jealousy, it must have been, eating her up. Or tantalizingly, it was a toilet cleaner she used. Worked like a charm. Thought, though you'd think he'd have tasted it. Must have been that drunk, but they found her out all right. Or I would help Rita to make the bread, sinking my hands into the soft resistant warmth, which is so much like flesh. I hunger to touch something. So I feel like some of the stuff she's talking about in this passage could happen from time to time, like very rarely and sporadically, but it's not something I think that would often happen, and I think some of it probably doesn't ever happen. But this part where she talks about helping Rita make the bread and her hands sinking into the soft resistance, that does remind me of some of the testaments. All right. All right, I think we're at the end of the chapter. Other than cloth or wood, I hunger to commit the act of touch. But even if I were to ask, even if I were to violate decorum to that extent, Rita would not allow it. She would be too afraid. The Marthas are not supposed to fraternize with us. Fraternize means to behave like a brother. Luke told me that. He said there was no corresponding word that meant to behave like a sister, or sororize. It would sororize it would have to be, he said, from the Latin. So there's a sorority and a fraternity. Fraternize, sororize, whatever. He said from the Latin. He liked knowing about such details, the derivation of words, curious usages. I used to tease him about being pedantic. I take the tokens from Rita's outstretched hand. They have pictures on them of the things they can be exchanged for. 12 eggs, a piece of cheese, a brown thing that's supposed to be steak. I place them in my zippered pocket in my sleeve where I keep my pass. Tell them fresh for the eggs, she says, not like the last time. And a chicken. Tell them not a hen. Tell them who it's for, and then they won't mess around. All right, I say. I don't smile. Why tempt her to friendship? So that's, I believe, the end of that chapter. Let's just double check real quick. Yep. All right, so end of the chapter. Let's go ahead over to my live scene. And so that's just a little glimpse of kind of a day in the life, I guess, like the beginning of the day when she's getting up and getting dressed and getting ready to go out, and Rita's handing her grocery tokens, which have pictures and not words, because these ladies are not allowed to read, which I find dreadful. But this is one of the main ways they keep these ladies from being able to rise up against them. They know what they're doing. They have done all kinds of shit to keep people oppressed and keep them under their thumb and keep them from being able to have real freedom. And anyway, that is all I've got for you for now. I will probably do this again. I don't know exactly how much I'll be reading, but I'll probably select a small portion to read either probably sometime this weekend. So think between Friday and Sunday. And if you're interested in any of my other stuff, I have been doing Gen V reactions. I'm going to do one more, and then I'm taking a break from that because Night of the Seven Kingdoms is coming out. And after that, Bridgerton Season 4 is coming out. Excuse me. And I will be doing live streams for Night of the Seven Kingdom. I will start start, I think, on Sunday. Yeah, I will start on Sunday, probably around 1, 2, or 3, and do a pre watch along with going over a couple trailers. I have not watched any of the trailers yet. I have read one of the books for Night of the Seven Kingdoms, or the Duncan Egg stories, whatever you want to call them. I've read one book from that part of the storyline for Game of Thrones. I've read many other Game of Thrones books, but for that particular story, I've read one. I will do a pre-watch. I will watch through a couple trailers. I'll talk about my thoughts of what's coming up, and then the next one I will do will be after the episode comes out. So it actually comes out Sunday night, at least for us. For others, it may come out Monday, like middle of the night or early morning Monday. But for us, it comes out Sunday night. So I'll watch it. I will do a after watch live stream on Tuesday. So that's how I'm doing that. And after that, it will be every Tuesday I'm going to do an after watch. I believe the second week they're going to have it come out on Monday rather than Sunday. So I don't know why they're doing that, but they are. So yeah. So first Sunday I'll do pre-watch, and then after that every Tuesday I'll do like an after watch. I'll talk about what happened in the episode. I might have something to show, like some kind of little video clips or something to show. It depends. And if I have anything to say about it, I might say what I think might be coming up in the next episode. I am trying not to like follow too many people on that, so I don't get a bunch of extra spoilers and stuff. But if I have thoughts from what I have seen and what I have heard about, I may chime in with what I think might be happening on the next episode. But it'll be every Tuesday. And after that, on the 29th, Bridgerton Season 4 is supposed to start. And it depends on how long. I will be doing reactions to that, which I have to edit. So it depends on how long it takes me to edit those videos. That will determine when I actually start posting those reactions. Anyway, that is all I got for you. I'll see you when I see you.